Hey, how's it going? My name is Wes, welcome back to another video. In today's short video, I'm going to introduce you to a new topic which we haven't talked about yet, which are the yellow lessons. And the yellow lessons are verb lessons. So in today's video, I want to give you an introduction to verbs to help you understand what verbs are and how they are being used in the Spanish language. Alright, so today's short video, introduction to verbs. Now, first and foremost, an obvious question that you could ask yourself would be, what is a verb? And so by looking at this example, I'll try to explain to you what a verb is exactly. So in this sentence, I walk to the store, we have different words bundled together which form the sentence. So as we talked about in the previous lesson, the word I, for example, is a subject pronoun. That's the grammatical term we use to refer to the word I. And when we talk about verbs, what we often refer to are action words. So words that describe motion or that describe what a person is doing. So in this sentence, I walk to the store, the word of motion or the word that describes what I am doing is the word walk. So walk in this sentence is actually our verb. Now walk is a version of the full verb, which is to walk. And in English, you will often see that any verb will start with to. So to walk, to go, to leave, to play, and so forth. So we use verbs either to describe motion or to describe what someone is doing. So for example, I walk, you walk, it walks, or we walk. Now as you can see, if we talk about it walks, then we actually add an S to walk. And we do this because otherwise this sentence would not be grammatically correct. And this action of changing the verb to match with the subject pronoun, which is it in this case, that action or process is called conjugation or conjugating a verb. And in the English language, this happens regularly, but not as much as in the Spanish language. So here we see that if I say I walk or you walk, walk stays the same, it doesn't change. Only if we say it walks, we add an S to walk to make it grammatically correct. However, in Spanish, you will see that for every subject pronoun, we have a different verb conjugation. So the verb changes every time we say I or you or it. If you're a bit confused right now and you don't really know what I'm talking about yet, don't worry, this is an introduction to verbs. In the next couple of lessons, we will go over some verbs that we will learn and everything will become much more clear. But for now, I just want to give you an introduction to what verbs are and how we use them. So to give you some more examples of what verbs look like in English, I've taken some popular verbs so that you can see what they look like. Now, as I said before, usually in English, if we talk about a verb, we use the word to describe the verb. So to walk, to read, to do, to become, to grab, to fly, to hold, and so on. So pretty much a verb is just a word that describes either motion or that describes what something or someone is doing. And as I said before, verbs can change or conjugate, that's a grammatical term we use, conjugating a verb, so that when you talk about it, for example, or he or she in English, it changes from, in this example, bike to he, she bikes. Because if you say he, she, it, bike, it's not grammatically correct, so we need to add the S. And you will see that in Spanish this happens way more than we do in English, because if you look at this example, bike, it pretty much stays the same everywhere except for he, she, it, where we add an S. In Spanish, bike would be different for all the subject pronouns. So I, you, he, she, we, everything would be different. So that's a bit annoying about the Spanish language, but there are some tricks you can use to make it easier to conjugate the verbs, which of course we will talk to in later lessons also. So that's pretty much it for verbs, what they are and how we use them. Now there is one more thing about verbs which I would already like to point out. And that is that there's two different types of verbs. There's irregular verbs and irregular verbs. And now I know what you're thinking, oh my god, Wes, there's so much to learn. And I understand, but please stick with me here. And even if you forget everything by the end of this video, that's totally fine too. But pretty much regular verbs are the verbs that we just saw. For example, bike. So I bike, you bike. Pretty much everything stays the same. However, if we look at a verb like to be, for example, then we see that it changes quite a lot depending on the subject pronoun. And we cannot really recognize anymore the original verb, which is to be. So to be really changes into I am, which has nothing to do with to be anymore. And when a verb changes this much, so it doesn't really apply the same rules as the normal, regular verbs, then we call a verb irregular. Now, the good thing about the English language is that a lot of verbs are regular. However, in Spanish, there's quite a lot of irregular verbs, so verbs that don't really stick to the regular verbs. And this makes them quite annoying to learn. However, don't worry, I'm here for you. We're going to go over 15 of the most popular verbs together, really into depth with every verb. We're going to look at the different tenses. So if you don't know what a tense is, don't worry. You have, for example, the present tense, I am, the past tense, I was, or the future tense, I am going to be. So these are different ways of, again, conjugating the verb. Now for now, don't worry about all of this. We're going to go over this together. Just for now, know that in total, we are going to go in depth into 15 verbs. And then we're also going to learn the difference between verbs, the different categories of verbs that we have. It's 3 different categories. We're also going to look at the different tenses. So future, past, and present tense. And then at the end, I'm going to give you 25 or 50 more verbs that you can learn. But because we've been into depth with these 15 verbs, you can now apply the same rules to these 25 or 50 other verbs. So we don't need to study them one by one anymore. Alright, that's it for verbs. That's it for the introduction to verbs. I could understand that this was quite a lot to handle. However, this was an introduction to verbs. You don't really need to remember anything that we learned here. I just wanted to introduce you to the beautiful world of verbs. So, yellow lessons from now on are verb lessons. And when I first started learning Spanish, verbs were actually one of the things that I hated most learning. But after a while, as I started learning more and more, verbs actually became one of my favorite things to learn. So I hope that this same thing applies to you and that you will actually eventually start liking to learn verbs. Again, as always, if something is unclear or you want to dive a bit further into understanding how verbs work and what they are, you can go to my website, SpanishWithWes.com, where you will find all of the information you need. I will put a link down in the description. Alright, and that's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. I genuinely hope that this was helpful. And of course, as always, I would like to see you in the next video.